the temperature gets taken down. Because when I talk to my friends, I grew up in LA. When I talk to my friends, they're like, and maybe it's because they're privileged and they live in good neighborhoods. Like, I don't see any real problem here. The protests I've seen have been pretty peaceful.
Well, look, there's plenty of bad shit going on. It's always like that.
Professor Scott Galloway sits down with Chris Cuomo on his podcast to talk about protests, Gavin Newsom versus Trump, and other things. Let's watch a few clips of this interview, and I'll give my thoughts on it afterwards.
Yeah, so a lot there. So I would agree with you. The Democrats, I would argue, our heart's in the right place. We go too far and we kind of we stick our chin out and invite an overreaction. And
you invite the wrong people to the party. You invite the wrong people to the party. That's the problem with these protests, is that these Guy Fawkes masks show up. The Antifa show up. The pro-Pal/pro-Hamas show up. People with their own country flags show up. And it winds up diluting a righteous and rightful pushback against what ICE is doing in a lot of communities, which I do think is worthy of scrutiny. And they blow it, in my opinion.
But I always go back to, I'm one of these old men now. I'll watch anything starring Hitler. I stay up all night watching documentaries on World War II. And I have said, and I've gotten a lot of pushback that I'm being hysterical, is that I think America has a lot of similarities with 30s Germany right now. And if you look at early Nazi propaganda, it was very much emphasized that the real problems were internal, that it was saboteurs, communists, Jews, immigrants who were the problem. And when we have real, I think, issues with Russian troops and a murderous autocrat invading Europe, China stealing IP, I think some of Trump's instincts were right around an asymmetric trade relationship, Iran spinning up its nuclear capabilities. I think we have real issues overseas, but instead of dealing with those hard problems or distracting from this tax bill, which I just see as the biggest transfer of wealth from rich to poor, young to old, from the future to the past, it seems like he's taken, and you don't have to be Hitler to take notes from the playbook of the 30s that were very successful, in that he's blaming immigrants, protesters, journalists, academics. It mirrors sort of the same playbook, and it takes me to a very dark place. And I worry that, everyone thinks of America as just being so big and bold that America ends with a civil war and it goes out with a bang. I think America could very easily kind of go out of business with a whimper, and it goes something like this. And that is, and I think this is a step towards it, or a potential piece on the chessboard. And that is, Governor Newsom says, look, fuck it. I'm sick of sending $80 billion for you to deploy national troops against peaceful protests. We're no longer they're a net creditor to the U.S. government. They send $80 billion more than they take. And Texas takes $70 billion more than it sends. And Governor Newsom says, we're sick of this. And then, or Texas, if, say, Governor Newsom or a Mayor Pete are elected and the president in 2028 say, we aren't certifying the election. We don't sign up for this president. And then slowly but surely you have California, which is the fourth largest economy in the world, tech-based economy, does a lot of trade with Asia. The South, Texas, leads an oil-based economy that does a lot of trade with the Middle East and Latin America. The East Coast becomes very Europe-centric, a lot of trade, a lot of financial services, a lot of tech. Midwest becomes a manufacturing economy. Its strongest trading partners become Mexico and Canada. And then they develop their own currencies. They do what DeSantis did in 2022, weaponize or deputize civilians. And we essentially become the European Union.
Chris Cuomo is hilarious because people having their own country's flags is literally what it means to be American. Everyone being welcome from all around the world. I bet you he's never had a problem with the St. Patrick's Day parade or anything like that. I would love to hear why he thinks that's different. And Professor Galloway does a great job trying to keep Cuomo focused. Protests are not the bad thing. The protests are trying to combat, or at least have their voices heard, against the bad things that ICE is doing. And ICE is not just some random thing that's happening. It's a government agency that was created to target people in the country. It was an excuse to use the military inside the country. And they just ran out of money, but then out of nowhere, just got billions of dollars. And then out of nowhere, with no debate, no conversation, no push and pull, nobody to talk against it or for it, it was just approved billions of dollars in new spending. Anytime there's something for you, it's always, we can't afford it, or who's going to pay for that? Healthcare for everybody. Oh my goodness, how are we going to pay for that? But we have an unlimited budget for evil. Chris Cuomo has to focus, but it's difficult for him to focus on what's important because he's never actually had to. He's always been told what to talk about and how to talk about it. That's how you work in mainstream media this whole time. And he's no longer there, but them instincts don't just go away. Sometimes aggressive protesting is not even enough, because now we have our very own official concentration camp, a for-profit concentration camp, so much for profit that it even has its own merchandise. And I saw this on Twitter where someone said, I never thought I would give them any credit, but not even the Nazis had concentration camp merch. They at least had that minimum standard of decency. Or maybe they weren't thinking ahead as how profitable evil merch could really be.
And that is kind of a series of member states. And America kind of breaks apart with sort of hushed tones, without like a lot of sirens, but sort of just, very kind of background, white noise. So I look at this stuff, I look at 30s Germany, and I look at how America ends, and I find this stuff really frightening. I think the winner here is probably Governor Newsom, because what I have seen of him is he's been, I think, fairly forceful yet dignified. And, but I don't, I just hope the temperature gets taken down. Because when I talk to my friends, I grew up in LA. When I talk to my friends, they're like, and maybe it's because they're privileged and they live in good neighborhoods. Like, I don't see any real problem here. The protests I've seen have been pretty peaceful.
Well, look, there's plenty of bad shit going on. It's always like that. And it is what you want to see. If you want to see protests, you see protests. You want to see people who are harming people and property and going after cop cars and everything else, that's there too. Is it by percentage? It doesn't matter. Once there's any of it, you can see whatever you want to see. So are they protests? Yes. Are they largely protests? Yes. Are they only protests? No. Does Newsom win? Depends on the lens. His party, what the people in the streets want, he is not their guy. And for him, this could go two ways. One, his state's on fire again, Scott, and he doesn't seem to be in control of it. And that is fair. He doesn't seem to be in control. Him versus Homan is a decent look for him. We'll see how he handles it. I think Newsom does way too much lefty media. He's got to expose himself to less safe harbors. Can't just be talking to every, little bookish MS, correspondent they send out there. But his party isn't where he is. That's why he's been trying to distance himself from the party. I get it. My review of it is, on a macro level that you look at it, I see why you see what you see, although it's interesting because the founding fathers, many of them wanted exactly what you're describing. I mean, even Jefferson, a lot of them wanted this loose association of member states.
The 13 states.
I think federalism has a lot of pluses for us, but let's put that to the side.
And here's evidence of Gavin Newsom sitting down with lefty media like Steve Bannon.
Hey, Steve, I really enjoy this conversation. I think it's incredibly valuable, and I appreciate the spirit to which we were able to engage, and I hope we can continue the conversation, and I hope we get out of this week without any further disruptions. It's been a hell of a beginning of administration, and I appreciate your advocacy. I also appreciate that you call balls and strikes as it relates to what you're seeing with the administration.
Gavin Newsom is nowhere near left wing, so much so. Here he is personally removing homeless tents. So people like Cuomo, he feels like his job is to make sure that no politician sides too much with regular people. People like Cuomo are there to make sure that they understand your job is not to actually help people. It's to placate the industry elites. And God forbid Newsom and Mayor Pete run for president. That would be a disaster. Even if Trump can't win again, they're still super easy to beat.
America is unique in one way that really matters right now versus the EU, versus the Middle East, South America, pretty much any other conglomerate you can look at. We make up our own problems here. Nobody else does it to the degree that we do. Everybody else that's dealing with real shit, even Russia, okay? They have real problems that are a threat to them. We have made ours up. Our culture wars, what's going on in Los Angeles, this is completely contrived, Scott. We don't have a murderous horde of illegal entrants in this country right now that are creating tension for our own safety. Trans sports, reproductive rights, the legitimacy of our elections. These are all manufactured things. Lake and Riley. You should see how MAGA goes crazy when I say the following thing, and I'll do it again because I love dumb and crazy. It's my favorite combination when I'm sparring. Someone who's really angry and I know hasn't studied what we're about to do, this is going to be great because it's all emotion and no technique, and I'm going to take them right down. Lake and Riley mattered. Her family's pain matters. But if you care about who's killing Lake and Riley's in this country, you'll never arrive at a legal entrance. And they say one is too many. And I'm so mad at you for not seeing that one is too many. That is not a standard that we apply anywhere. And they'll grandstand and say, but it matters. They shouldn't be here. It's always been that way. We've always had people in this country who didn't come in legally. Should you limit it? Of course. But the idea that that's the boogeyman to focus on is propaganda. But we make it up, Scott. That's what makes us different. We make it up here.
Yeah, we're definitely, if this is a horror film, the call's coming from inside of the house. We're energy independent, we're food independent, we have unparalleled natural resources. We're the largest oil producer in the world and the largest producer of chips for AIs. We cover the whole stack, from a blessing, an unearned blessing of commodities, to being able to create the best IP in the world through our universities that result in exports that get 95 points of gross margin. Our stock market has been absolutely unparalleled. We used to be 10% of the world's GDP. Now we're, a quarter of it. Demographically, we're actually look pretty good versus other Western nations. Friendly Canada to the north, harmless Mexico to the south. Our problems are of our own, absolutely of our own manufacturing.
Chris Cuomo there says there's not real issues that actually target America, which is true. The main problems we face are not from outsiders. It's from the richest people in the world bribing politicians and media companies to make sure that the focus is on each other's neighbor and not them robbing all of us in every way they can. Housing, energy, schools, transportation, every way they can. Make it more difficult for people to just live so that they can profit more. You can't say, yeah, Canada's not a problem because they're peaceful, and Mexico's not a problem because they're largely peaceful. And even if some people or groups in Mexico aren't that peaceful, those people are never going to declare war against us. So we're good off that. So what are the actual problems? Talk about that part. But Chris Cuomo's job his whole life was to make sure people think that the biggest problems going on in the world is each other and not the people that control us. And if you made it this far, you might as well like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace.